All right. Now I'm very excited to welcome back two horse racing specialists in Sean Kanaki from the Oddsbreakers and Marco D'Angelo from Wager Talk. You can follow them both on X at Marco in Vegas and at the Great Kanaki. Marco, Sean, thanks for coming back. We have horse racing. I believe it's horse racing season, isn't it, Sean?
If I'm on the show a lot, it usually is, that's for sure. So favorite thing for me to bet, not always the most profitable, but if you hit a big one, get one of those pick fours, pick fives in the window once or twice a year, you're having a pretty good year. So
that's true, man. And those kind of those lottery picks that are a little bit more than lottery. There's strategy to it, and that's why we love it. But that's cool. Marco, how are you doing this week?
Busy week as usual. I mean, I love this time of the year with, the Triple Crown races, obviously, but it also coincides with we're deep into the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, and baseball season's underway. And for me, I started a couple years ago because we have a team here in Vegas, and I ended up becoming a season ticket holder. We go and the WNBA is on my palette as well. So a lot of stuff going on. The WNBA gets off to their season opener this weekend. So excited about that. Busy stuff.
Well, there you go. Marco watches all the stuff that has bigger edges because there's less people betting it. So, if you want to make a little money with Marco this year, he's got the lowdown here. He's got tickets. Look at that. He's got season tickets, the WNBA to hockey. We love it, Marco. That's awesome. Keep rocking, man. To pick up where we left off, though, Marco, it was pretty convenient for your internet to go out right when I'm done ripping on the Steelers and their quarterback situation. I thought maybe that was planned. I wasn't sure what was going on there, but you started getting into a little NFL. I don't remember what you were going to say, but did you delve into any early NFL on the day that the schedule is coming out?
Well, for me, as I said, with the schedule that I just ran off for you, I don't really start digging deep into the football season until we get into June, and the playoffs are down to every other day, one game in looking at that. But I can tell you one future that I did I like so far, and it's in my division. I follow the obviously the NFC or AFC North quite closely with my Steelers. And, with everything that's going on with the Steelers this year, we don't know if we're going to have a quarterback or not. We drafted Will Howard in the draft, got him in, one of the later rounds, and re-signed Mason Rudolph. Everything that's going on, and yet we're still waiting on, if Aaron Rodgers is going to show up. I think the Steelers situation's not good. Okay. Cleveland situation, I think, is even worse. Obviously, with everything they got there. I mean, you look at what they have for a quarterback room right now, and it's a crowded quarterback room, but I don't know that I really want any of the ones that they have there. So that leaves it's a two-team race for me as far as division. And Baltimore's going to be the favorite, as they should be, because, they're probably, I can't say it in recent years, but for the past, the two best run organizations clearly were Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Baltimore, gets that, merit by themselves now with what the Steelers are doing. So you look for Baltimore to win this, but there's no value on them. The value to me is on Cincinnati. This is a team that, for whatever reason, every year has shot themselves in the foot early on. Last year, they had an excuse. Okay. Joe Burrow was coming back off of an injury, had the slow start. You saw what this team did the second half of the season. This is a team that also had some contract issues last year where guys were trying to get contracts renegotiated. It was a bit of a distraction. They got that taken care of this year. Can't say I agree with the money they've spent on the positions that they have spent. All I can say is they need to score a lot of points this year because they'll need to because they spent all their money on the offense. That's for sure. But I think barring an injury, I think this is Cincinnati's year to win the division, and you're getting them at plus money. So that's where I'm at. I'm seeing them at plus 230 to win the NFC North. I think that's where the value plays at.
Okay, plus 230. That's that's a good number. You got Joe Burrow there, and yeah, the Ravens have to take a step back. You're right. Cleveland is a mess. Sam Burgess chimed in saying their schedule is very hard, and yes, it is extremely hard this year. Warren Sharp has their schedule based on a Vegas win total. And I'll just quick share my screen as the 31st hardest schedule in all of the league here. And that's pretty brutal here, for a team that, you'd think would have a better schedule for not finishing well in their division, finishing dead last. And there they are sitting 31st, another hard schedule, which is brutal, man, to consider. You kind of wish that the fourth place teams would be rewarded. Look at the Giants there. They got to play the 49ers who took fourth place. And I mentioned that earlier as well. So, Sam, as a question, how do you guys feel about Baltimore's offensive line? I'll go to Sean on this one first. I don't know if Sean delved into the NFL yet. Can you answer that, Sean? Or
no, I can't. I've just done a little bit of just eyeballing some season win totals, and that's really all I've looked at so far. I usually don't get all the way in until that schedule actually comes out. We get the finalized where, when, and who, so I can really dive into it. So I haven't gone too deep yet. Only thing I played so far was just a real small bet on the Cowboys over 7.5. Just on the bounce back. I still think McCarthy's potentially going to, be able to save some things there. So we'll see. That's the only one I played, and I think I got it at 6.5 right when it came out, and I think it's up to 7.5. Excuse me, not McCarthy. Wrong season. Jeepers.
Yeah, Schottenheimer. Brian Schottenheimer.
Schottenheimer, thank you. Old habit. So new coach, new team, new attitude. I think we're going to be looking for something good here. But I think I got it at 6.5 initially. I think it's up to 7.5 now. So that's really all I've looked at so far.
That's a hell of an early total there, man, because you still got some star power there with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, and we'll just see about the new coach. That's always big, the wild card. But man, how bad can they get in the situation? I thought the Cowboys had a decent draft, and thank you, Sam, for nice words about us being a good show on the air. Cincinnati, what are they doing with Trey Hendrickson, though, Marco? Why are you pissing that guy off? You draft a Shamar Sterner there, and just be like, oh, we don't need you. Yeah, you do need him. I agree with your bet, Marco, but dude, you can't piss him off. He is literally their best defensive player.
Well, there's not a lot of them, so it's kind of easy to rise to the top. But yeah, I get it. They have been, dysfunctional, but right now, because everybody else is becoming more dysfunctional, I mean, Cleveland is a complete mess. Pittsburgh, to my opinion, is taking, back what they've done with Aaron Rodgers is just totally so opposite of the Steeler way that it really upsets me. Okay. If you wanted to sign him and you guys worked it out and you did, but this holding us hostage type thing. And it's just, it's not like this guy's in his prime. Okay. He's got 1 or 2 years best left. It's just, it's a Band-Aid till they find something better to sit there and wait. But when you were talking about Dallas, to go to them, jump Kiev, don't forget, they got George Pickens now. All the problems are solved.
Worked for the
Steelers. He wasn't a headache at all, was he? He's going to be either really bad or really good for the Steelers.
This is the one thing about the Steelers, and it just, I don't know. Is there a team better at finding talent at the wide receiver position in the rounds that they do? But yet on the same token, the worst head cases in the NFL. It's just, go down the list of talent that we've had at wide receiver over the last 10 years. And almost every one of them have been a nut job.
That's true.
Starting with Mike Wallace to Antonio Brown. Yeah. To Claypool, to Juju Smith-Schuster, to Pickens. It's just, they find the talent, but it's a headache, every one of them.
since their Super Bowl win, when you had guys like Hines Ward that were real team players. That's really what it used to be. And they changed and they draft the head cases. And don't get me wrong, receivers are more head cases in general than other teams. I don't know. It just bothers them that that they think they're wide open. They're just not getting the ball thrown them. It all gets to their head. Should be a whole study done on these guys. To answer your question, Sam, the Ravens offensive line looks fine to me. I mean, they're ranked number 2 on Pro Football Focus. They just drafted a guy from LSU. I think they relinquished, Makari, a center there, or guard center that was pretty good. I don't know a ton about. I didn't research a lot yet either, is what I'm trying to say. But I think they're just going to be great. You still have a beast of a running back there that just got another contract in Henry. So, they're the team to beat, but the only team that proven that they can beat them is the Bengals. So I understand Marco's point on that. But moving on, let's horse race, man. Let's talk a little Preakness here. And here we are, the Preakness Stakes coming up. We just had the Derby. So the big question here, Sean, why is Sovereignty not running this big race? What the heck's going on there?
Well, it's a trainer and owner decision long term with what they're going to want to do, and we've seen it more often in the last 10 years than we had prior to that ever. And it's really about taking care of the horse long term and what their goals are. And if you look at the race and the distance, a little bit shorter, and thinking maybe it might not have as good a chance to win the Triple Crown running all 3, especially on the 2-week turnaround. So I think it has more to do with, kind of like taking care of a pitcher's arm than anything for long-term prospects for the horse. But if I was an owner or trainer and I won the Kentucky Derby, I'd be all in and going for it. Why not? But I am not a horse owner or trainer or multimillionaire in any sense of the word. But, I think that's where they're at. And certainly Sovereignty could have come into this race and win it. Absolutely. But that's what they're looking at, I think.
That just tells me that maybe for the last 150 years, the races have been too close together. Maybe, I don't know. Marco, do you concur with Sean there?
Well, being a horse owner, I am torn on this, topic. And being the traditionalist that I am, we love the Triple Crown. I mean, there's the 3 races in 5 weeks. Yes, that is so hard on the horses, and being the good of the horse and what we've seen in all of sports. I mean, look what we have in the NBA with load management. Okay. This is the equivalent of load management for the horses. And these are 1,200-pound animals that have, their legs aren't that big. Okay. They're thick. They take a pounding, and Belmont is a Hall of Fame trainer. He's an old school trainer. Okay. And he is looking for the good of the horse, and to get an owner. And I'm like you, Sean, my instinct would be, I want that opportunity to race for the Triple Crown. I think I would be more apt to run the race, the shorter race, the second one, and then have the decision after that. Okay. See how we came out of the race, see what, obviously if we even have the Triple Crown still on the line, but more, reassess from there. To do it in the middle leg, it's tough. I know that I can tell you that every sportsbook director here in Vegas that I talk to, that we have on a lot of the radio shows that I do here, they're crushed. Okay. Because what happens is when you have the Triple Crown, usually you get 2 heavily bet races, because the Derby is the Derby. That's always going to be big for the books because there's the buzz. Well, then it's a vet. When you have the Preakness, the Triple Crown's still in play, okay? Because the Derby winner usually shows up and the Triple Crown's still in play, so people are excited. If the Kentucky Derby winner doesn't repeat and win the Preakness, the Belmont just becomes another race on a Saturday card in the sports books. Okay. There's really no buzz to it. It doesn't move the needle hardly at all, except for the hardcore fans. So, that's what hurts growing the sport. The other part of it is it's a business, and I can understand that part too. You want to save the horse, You don't want to risk injury, because the big money, if you got a good horse, is not what they're going to make the rest of this year racing. It's going to be what they make in the breeding shed. When these horses are getting $250,000 a pop stud fees, you can breed 100, 150 mares per year. That's a lot of money for several years for, the good stallions. And that's what they're looking to protect. Now, the flip side to that is it's also hurting the growth of the sport, because we don't have any more cigars. We don't have any more John Henrys. You're never going to see that again, where owners are going to race their horses beyond, the 2 and 3 year old seasons, because that's where all the money is. And then they retire them to stud. Occasionally you'll get a horse come back for a 4-year-old season, but not very often. So there is an alternative to the 3 races in 5 weeks. And I talked about this on the show that I do here in town. It's like, if you change this, there are repercussions. And the suggestion was, why not just move these 3 races to first Saturday of May, first Saturday of June, first Saturday of July? That's not a problem as far as spacing the races out. Most of the horses generally in thoroughbred racing will race on a 4 to 5 week schedule in between races. That would be perfect. Where the problem comes in is if you race the Belmont in the first week of July, that first Saturday, it's going to cause a problem with 2 other major 3-year-old races that are premier events for the summer, and are the premier signature races at 2 different tracks. It would create a problem for the Haskell at Monmouth Park, and it would create a problem for the Travers at Saratoga. Those are signature races that people point to. And you can't just, ditch a race, because, as I said, all the money in racing is at the 2 and 3 year old, and even more so at the 3-year-old level. And then, you try to keep a horse sound and fit to come back and race the first weekend in November in the Breeders' Cup. So it's dicey. And then if you do that, and then all of a sudden we have a couple Triple Crown winners right out of the bat because they're spaced better, then everybody's going to be crying, oh, now we got to have asterisks like Lou Gehrig, because they didn't do the Test of Champions. They didn't do the 3 races in 5 weeks. So I can make a solid case for each side. The owner in me that wants the fame and the glory and the money, I want to race 3. I want to race in all 3 legs. But,
so
the businessman, I can see the other side.
Okay.
Marco, what do you think? One of the other ones I heard about was flipping potentially the Belmont and the Preakness around and doing the longer race first on the 3-week break there, and then coming back on 2. Because if you get the 2 in on the big one, maybe you're more apt to run that shorter one at the end on a smaller break.
But you're also coming off of the most grueling of the 3, and then coming back to race it in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
I personally wouldn't like that one, because, those horses that race the Belmont, other than this year, it was the same last year. This will be the last year that it's going to be raced at 1.25 miles. But when you're doing the 1.5 miles, where for most of these horses, unless they turn to become turf horses, they're never going to run 1.5 miles again in their career. All right. And Belmont is known for, Big Sandy. It's a deep, tiring racetrack, and it is the Test of Champions. So if you extend that horse to that 1.5 mile race in the middle leg and have to come back in 2 weeks, I would not be a fan of that at all. And I think you would see less horses, try for the Triple Crown than in the format it is now. At least you get that 3rd week between the Preakness and the Belmont. And after the Belmont, you don't have a big race again until the Haskell or the Travers.
I think I don't care. This feels a lot like the baseball purists almost with the pitch clock. How they hated the idea. And then what happens, you're like, holy shit, this made so much. Why don't we do this long ago? I understand the Travers. Sorry, move it a little bit, and it's not like you're going to get the horses trying to get the Triple Crown every year, in the Travers. It don't matter. You're not going to get that. Sure, you're going to get other horses, but you got to adjust for that. This is your money making deal here, is this Triple Crown. And I would even go as far to say, what if you even expanded the field from 9 horses or 8 horses to 15 or 20 in the Preakness, so we can hit bigger tickets? That's the gambler in me, Marco, talking about that. But here's the thing: you're dying. The horse racing's dying because of other sports out there to bet on. And the Kentucky Derby is really the thing keeping it alive right now. And seeing the freaking favorite not racing for the Triple Crown, it's just sad to me, man. It is.
It is. In the point that I said about like Cigar and John Henry, those horses raced, way past their 3-year-old seasons. And the excitement that you had when Cigar raced and he was on that winning streak, people can't lock into a fan. In baseball, here, use the example in hockey. Marc-Andre Fleury, retiring, at the end of this year, the fanfare that he got in every city that he went on the farewell tour, there's never going to be another, player as popular as he was with everybody. Nobody's ever had a bad thing to say about him. And people latch on to stars. Okay. You don't get to latch on to a star in horse racing because they're gone in 2 years. You see them at 2, you see them at 3, and then they're in the breeding shed. They're having fun in the breeding shed, but we don't get to watch those horses race. And that's what kills the sport, is there's no superstars to latch on to for a period of time.
Yeah. If we're lucky, we get someone like Nick's Go every 5 or 6 years, right? Where they pop out after not having a big 3-year-old season and are a late bloomer, and that's someone we can latch on to. But they're not running in the big races outside of Breeders' Cup, and that's what we get. So because everybody else is done and sudden. Yeah.
We had a nice story last year with the last 2 years with Cody's Wish. Yep. That horse had a following and moved the headlines, because of the sub story with it. But he was an older horse that raced later and raced well.
Yeah, it's not like the jockeys get that much, of the star. I know Flavian Pratt, gets a lot, and Mike Smith did and all that. But I know Bob Baffert wishes he was, but no, it's the horses that are the stars. I do understand that. But I think that the idea of making it the first Saturday of every month, or even like maybe you just move the Belmont one Saturday back to the last Saturday in June. I don't know, because you still get at least 3 weeks. I think that's what you need to do to get these horses racing and for this to stop happening. But I don't want to talk about this for the half the show here. We have a lot of Preakness to talk about. Sean, what's the weather looking like for this weekend, my man? Are we going to get nailed again with a sloppy crowd?
Chance of rain every day. Right now, it looks like it'll be cleared out by Saturday. So hoping everything dries up. Get the Black-Eyed Susan and hopefully dry, and then mostly dry, and then the rest of the track dries up after that. So I'm thinking Saturday we're going to look fairly clear, but again, fingers crossed. It's hot and humid right now, so could get a pop-up storm is what the weather shows, but it's 4 days away, so who knows?
Well, there you go. Who knows? Marco, it's still a little early for the weather. Let's talk about this. The favorites now, because you got journalism in there, right? He's like 8 to 5, right? What do you think about his price? Is this like a horse you're going to try to beat? I mean, who are the 3 or 4 favorites in this race?
Well, obviously, the horse to beat is journalism, and he is deserving of the price. We talked, for the little bit that I got to talk on the last show before I lost you guys. I was all over, journalism. I loved him in that one. And I think, Chris was big on him as well. And he didn't do anything that, makes me feel that he's vulnerable in this race. He got compromised at the start of the race. Okay. Umberto Rispoli did not want to get away the way he did. He got, sandwiched coming out of the gate. He had to, alter his path coming out. He would have got away a little bit better. And because he got moved into the inside, he had to use a little bit of them not to get shuffled too far back at the rail in the Derby. You know, you want to save ground being at the rail, but on the same token, you don't want to be at the rail behind 15 horses and have to navigate everything. So he got him to the best position that he could get him because of what happened coming out of the gate. Then he was able to maneuver the horse to the outside and get him moving in the turn. Now, the only knock that I will give Journalism, and it wasn't his fault, I think Umberto might have pushed the go button a second or two early, okay? And that got him moving, and you say, how could you say he pushed it, too soon? He cleared those horses like they were standing still around the turn. Well, he was wide, and he was covering extra ground. But more importantly, this is a horse that still, doesn't have a lot of career starts. These are young 3-year-olds. They're still learning. And sometimes when you clear and you're at the top of the lane and you don't have a target in front of you, these horses sometimes will get run down. And I think that is, if you reverse the 2 trips and give Journalism the trip that Sovereignty got with something to run at and to do it, in deep stretch, I think the race would have been reversed. So I think both horses raced extremely well. I think Journalism got compromised at the beginning, and I think it might have caused Umberto again, when you haven't won a Kentucky Derby yet, this is the biggest race on, in a jockey's career. You want to win that race, and the last thing you want to do is get caught in. You're more often, if you're going to make a mistake, it's going to be too soon instead of too late. And I think that's what it is. It's easy to, be a, backseat driver, but that's the way I saw the race.
All right. Well, Sean, who are the other favorites besides Journalism? And there might have been a race or a horse that you're kind of keen on in last Kentucky Derby that's racing in here. Maybe you can talk about him.
Yeah, less so after watching his trip in the Derby. Marco hit the nail on the head with that one. I actually had written down on here, if Journalism gets the trip that Sovereignty had, he wins that race. 100% agree. That is exactly where I was looking at it. I think if he gets that trip, he runs away with it with something to chase down. So complete agreement there. Sandman, really, really liked the way he looked in the close of that Arkansas Derby. Watching him in a little bit of traffic, kicking out, and then not being able to respond as he came around the corner in the Derby at all. He wasn't in a bad spot. He was a little pinched, and he had a little bit more traffic than Sovereignty and Journalism did, but there was nothing there, right? He reeled in 4 or 5 horses coming down the stretch, but certainly looked outmatched by both Journalism, Sovereignty, and Baeza. I think a lot of the price right now, the fact that there's not as many strong horses in this field. And then again, you're looking at where he ended up, with that whole social media aspect on the betting side of things, certainly played a big part into this for Sandman. So, well, I certainly like the way he looked coming off the Arkansas Derby, completely flipping my script here, just the way he looked compared to other like horses. And obviously, Publisher didn't really show. And even though he was able to, get a little bit back at the end, it's certainly not enough to make me want to see him compete with Journalism. He's just not going to do it in this race.
All right. I hate Sandman even more because I had what I thought an exacta box with Sovereignty and Journalism, $20 a piece side, $40 exacta box. And instead I had a betting foul, and for some reason put the horse that I was fading in there and checked my ticket later, and I hit the trifecta, but I didn't hit the big $480 exacta. So I came off pretty pissed off at my own mistake, and I was in the penalty box after that from a betting perspective, Marco. But I did see that you did well in the race, which made me happy. So I made my money back of my $300 some ticket, but I did not. I hit the $3 exacta. I didn't hit the $20 exacta.
That's why they say, Kiev, please check all tickets before stepping away from the window.
Right.
That's right. I have that ingrained in my head right now. I even wrote a piece on how I'm fading Sandman, and then I have him in my biggest exacta box. Yeah, that's fun. That's not
other 2 favorites real quick. One Goal Oriented is a Baffert horse, ran in one of the undercards on Derby Day at Churchill. Looked really impressive. The speed rating isn't quite where it needs to be to win this race, I don't think. It's tucked on the rail. It's going to have to go right away to get a chance to win this and probably go gate to wire. But certainly with Baffert, you never know, but it feels to me like he's bringing in his lesser squad here versus the horses that he'd run in some other things. So I'm not real high on the goal oriented coming off the rail. Clever again's interesting. Again, a horse that's going to have to get to the front. Hot Springs went all the way. Speed rating was where it needs to be. So I think that's the other horse in here. If it can get out in front, stay clear, and get up to the front of the pack, we certainly could see if there's one horse to pull the upset. I think it's that one. I think it's Clever again, the 8 coming off there. So those are the other two.
Yeah, I Clever again's a big price. Asmunsen horse here. Looks like Ortiz is the jockey here. So what's interesting is I'm looking again like an idiot at American Promise. He was in my other winner that I picked, and he felt like a really public horse, and he had a terrible run in the Kentucky Derby. His speed figure is 53. He wasn't dead last, but he wasn't that far from it. Now I have to ask myself, guys, was it the slop that American Promise maybe hated, or was he that bad? But I feel the same thing about Sandman too. Then a little bit. Maybe they just hated the track. They got hit in the eye, and with the mud's flying. The mud was flying in that race, guys. Is there? I have to look at some prices here, man. I mean, of course, it could be Journalism 1 and Sandman 2 and Clever Again 3. Well, that suck, But I'm wondering if something else can hit the board, and I'd sure be kicking myself for not betting American Promise when I thought he was going to do well in the Derby, and then all of a sudden he screws me in the Preakness by me not betting him. Marco, what do you think about this horse?
Well, I've got a strong opinion on this. I'm glad you brought this horse up. I was not high on American Promise at all going into the Derby, and I know he was a wise guy horse with a lot of people, and I couldn't understand it. I like him in this race on Saturday, and I'll tell you why, because I am a big replay. I'm a trip handicapper. I go back and watch the replays of all of I look at the racing form, but the racing form never tells you the whole story. You've got to actually watch the race. And if you go back, this horse wanted to break and go to get position. He has speed. He got shut off coming out of the gate. Jockey had to make a quick decision, and he took a hard left-hand turn to the rail. Got to the rail immediately. Then he panicked because he was at the rail and rushed him up into contention and was too close to the very fast fractions. There was only one horse that stayed on that was anywhere near the front at the beginning of that race. And the horse that really surprised me that he ended up holding on, I think he got fifth, was Owen Almighty. It was the only horse that had anything left in the stretch. And if you go back and watch the race on American Promise, when he went to make a move, he was too close to the speed to start with, and then he went up and drove up in between the two horses. He tried to split the two horses, and if you watch the jockey, he had to check him hard between the two horses. After everything he went through at the beginning of the race, getting checked, the going to the rail, then having to accelerate to get into position, and then have him wired up going too fast, too close to the early speed, and then check him when he tried to split horses, that ended it for him. And once he wasn't going to get anything, there's no sense in the jockey beating on him to finish eighth. Okay. He just let the horse finish where he did. And when you see a horse like that and you see a bad line like that, you wonder to yourself, okay, what was wrong? He only had a 53 buyer. He backed through the field. Good horsemen, jockeys will take care of the horse and, just let the horse finish the race. Don't beat him up. How you can tell the horse is okay? It's Dean Wayne Lucas, and he's bringing him back in 2 weeks. There's no way he would race this horse back in 2 weeks if he backed through the field because of a physical problem.
I was actually a little surprised that Owen Almighty wasn't going to run this race for, his performance in the last one too, because I thought that he would have been a sleeper maybe in this one too. It probably would have been a decent number, maybe like an 8-1 or something. I thought that he'd be one to race this, but he's not. What do you think about the fractions in this race, Sean? Do you think that it's going to be pretty fast from the start? Because I think this race was a mile and an eighth for a while. I thought they moved it up to 3/16. You can tell me I might be wrong. But I'm curious what the fractions are going to be, if there's going to be room for a closer or maybe even someone in the middle of the pack.
I don't think it's going to go off as fast as the Derby did. I don't think there's going to be that urgency from as many horses to get there. You know, you had 4 out of the 5 horses on the inside rail that had to try and get to the lead in the Derby. You had the 20 and the 12 also that had to come and try and get there. So you had 6 horses trying to get out right away. For this race, I think the only ones you're going to see going out hard is going to be one goal oriented that we talked. It's going to be the 2 I just talked about. The other shorter favorites here. Goal oriented is going to have to try and get up to the front, get off the rail a little bit and get clear, and then Clever again coming from the outside. Again, 2 races in, both of them have been all the way front, all the way to the end. So those are the 2 that are going to go. But I don't think the fractions are going to be that fast. You know, if you look at where the Derby went out, I think it was. I'm going to check one here quick. I think it was 46-1. Sound right? Yep, 46-1 at the half, and you know, I think it was 22 and change or 23 flat coming off right away. We're not going to see that number getting posted at all, but plays a little bit more into some of those guys that they're going to try and go gate to wire. But I don't think it's going to be a problem for journalism to reel any of these guys in coming off the stretch, even on a slower pace. You know, if you watched a lot of the races at Churchill last Saturday, it was a lot of closers coming out. The mud really affected a lot of people. They were trying to get to the front. The closers had a field day. A lot of favorites coming off of there too, but they really had a field day on the mud, and it should still be just fine. But they're not going to have any problems here.
Do you agree with those fractions, Marco, and the front runners in this race?
This is a race that more often than not, you're going to see the front runner or that horse that's just in that second flight. And I agree exactly with what Sean said, that those will be the 2 horses on the front end. I think American Promise is going to be sitting just behind them, and Journalism will be tucked at the rail, sitting those 2 third or fourth. And you're going to get honest fractions, but not fast fractions. And I think that the deep closers like Sandman, that's going to be a problem for him in this race. And like I said, I expect American Promise to, you know, if the hype was right, you know, going into the Derby, don't leave this horse off your ticket at a big number, because the public's going to overreact to that race line.
Yeah, there you go. You'll get a decent number with him then for sure. So with the 2, I thought you said were goal oriented and
Clever again.
Clever again. Yeah, Clever again, the 5-1. Okay, so those will be the front runners. You know, it's funny. The favorite wins almost half the time in this race, right, Marco? I thought that was a stat that we covered last time. Is it just because the field's easier? Is the gate better in this? Obviously, less horses. What's the reason that you think that the favorite wins a lot?
Okay, well, in recent years, okay, there's been a shift of trend. The trend has always been horses that raced in the Kentucky Derby are the horses that come back and race well in the Preakness. Okay. Even though all we hear about is coming back in 2 weeks, and the phrase you're going to hear all of the time, well, we got the new shooters in, you know, that didn't race in the Derby and they're fresh and all of that. The last 5 years, we've had more horses win the Preakness that didn't race in the Derby. Okay. One of those years totally cross out, because that was the COVID year whenever they moved the race around. But a couple of those horses that did win the Preakness also raced Kentucky Derby weekend on the undercard. We had Seize the Gray, race on the undercard last year, and then come back and win the Preakness. Prior to that, if you go back for the 20 years, I think it was like 14 Preakness winners raced in the Preakness, raced in the Derby, not necessarily won the Derby, but raced in the Derby. And the horses that did win the Derby and came back and raced in the Preakness, if you remember there, we had quite a run where we were spoiled, where we had how many opportunities for a Triple Crown there for a while after we had like a total drought. We kept having those opportunities where the Belmont was pertinent for us. So those horses are getting bet back in the Preakness. It's a truer to form race because of the smaller field, the smaller distance. And to be honest with you, Preakness generally, the Pimlico is a speed favoring track, in my opinion. You got that short first turn, you got that short stretch. That all favors, horses on the front end. Closers want those, they want that long stretch. They want, the speed on the front end to come back to them. It doesn't happen at Pimlico.
So it kind of favors the front runners in a way, right? In the stalkers, I would say. Would you call it journal? But I kind of thought journalism was more of a closer myself. I guess maybe
he's got tactical speed. I put him more as a stalker.
Okay.
So here's a real fun fact on the one you just said. So last year with Seize the Gray, different races, obviously on the undercard. He ran the Pat Day Mile, a little bigger field, a little better field than what Goal Oriented ran into the undercard. Came out with the speed rating at 92 and then came back and won this race. Goal Oriented came out with a 91. So right there with what Seize the Gray did last year.
Wow, there you go. Goal Oriented. It's kind of there, but then again, he's a Baffert horse. He's a Baffert horse. That's an emotional bet right there, either against or on him. Right? Like we don't love Baffert, but he's good for the racing, I guess. But it's like he's also shocked us before. He's got 8 Preakness victories, right? He's got the record for the amount of Preakness wins, and that's scary to me. And I don't know what to do with him. I don't know what to do with Goal Oriented. So I'll ask you. I guess Marco, then Sean, who are you tossing any horses completely off your trifecta cards, or are you kind of maybe going to hit the all button?
I might have an all button on a cold punch if I'm playing an exacta trifecta where I'm cold punching journalism in somebody's second. I'll hit an all button there. The horse that's really up against it, but he's going to be the local favorite, and that's the 5 horse. Okay. That's a local horse, local connections, local owners. And, the horse has done, good for those people, but he is so far over his head in here. But he wants to race, every owner, if your hometown track, I mean, I can tell you that, when way back when, I'm going back to 1994 when my 3-year-old filly won the biggest race for 3-year-old fillies in Pennsylvania at my home track. There's no greater feeling than, winning your prestigious race. And so you got the money, the horse pay the entry fee, you're in there. But if I was pitching one, that would be the horse I'm pitching.
Sean?
If I'm throwing out, it's pay Billy, and I'm not really impressed by Hard Honor either. Just where Admire Daytona ended up in the Derby, got edged out by Admire Daytona in the it was the UAE Derby, right? Yeah. So those are the two I'm probably tossing. I think every other horse in this is going to have the possibility to hit the board. I'm certainly not going to put them all on my bets, but if I got to toss a couple, those are the two that are going out for me.
Poor Billy and poor Japanese horse, right? Heart of Honor. Yeah.
Actually, I think it's a British horse ran against the Japanese horse.
Oh, right. American Daytona. Okay, there you go. Heart of Honor. Well, Heart of Honor, 12-1. I don't disagree. And it's funny, Sean. I almost feel like you're setting up a $5 trifecta here with journalism, my man. I mean, I guess we can get to it. Sean, like, how are you going to construct your card? Do you think there's going to be 1 or 2 maybe on top of your tries? Are you going to go a little bit more exactas, or how are you going to approach this race?
I'll be more exact oriented, and I'm going to have heavier bets on this one because I'm playing favorites. I think this is a favorite race. I think journalism's the horse to beat, and I don't think it's particularly close on the other side. So I'm going to have him in the 1 spot and probably Goal Oriented and Clever again in the 2 and 3 and larger dollar amounts on exactas, and hoping they come in that order. I'm not going to box them. I'm going journalism at the top of the card, and then just trying to play the favorites and beat it with the money.
Okay, that makes sense. And then sounds like I was right. Larger bet on the top of the card there. Marco tends to move some money around at times, but I don't know, Marco, what were you looking at this race? Do you kind of think that it's more wide open on the top, or do you think it's just like really journalism and American Promise?
I think it is more wide open in the 3rd spot. I can make a case for a lot of horses running 3rd. I have it as 3 horses, okay, for my top, and I have journalism on top. I just don't see, for somebody to beat him, journalism is going to have to beat himself, and somebody's going to have to take a very big step forward. Now, we've got horses that only have 2 and 3 starts that could do that, and goal oriented is one of them. You got one of the best, jockeys in the country. I'm a big Flavian Pratt fan. And he's going to get the trip he wants. He's got the rail. He's got the speed to leave. And we've seen it too many times where Baffert horse gets left alone on the lead and people think the horse is going to come back. And, they hit the afterburner in the stretch when you think they might be done and they hang on. But to me, it's journalism. My 2 horses behind him are American Promise and Clever Again. And then my set of 3 for the 3rd spot that, could be there is I really don't have much separating the 1, 6, and 7. For Sandman, he's going to need fast fractions. But even if he doesn't get fast fractions in this field, slow fractions from behind, he can run on the ticket for your trifecta and superfecta. But I don't see him as a factor in the race. But I also see the 1 as the horse that if he gets left alone on the lead could be tough, and he could be second. The horse we didn't mention at all was the 6, River Thames. This is a horse that you want to talk about tactical speed. He's going to be in that flight right behind the 2 front runners, in my opinion, as well. And, if this horse takes a step forward, Todd Pletcher, hard to leave that horse out. Remember, this is the one horse in this race that could have been in the Derby and decided not to.
And lost by a neck to Sovereignty in the Fountain of Youth. So he was right there.
He had the points to go to the Derby.
Right there in March. Yeah, that's a little bit. Yeah, think about that. I know he only took 3rd in the Bluegrass, but yeah, very close to Sovereignty there. That could be a second position right there. Well, that's, unfortunately, I don't know what to do, because I almost feel like if I did have American Promise up top, my ticket's going to be a lot more. Maybe I do like a more expensive or ticket on the try with journalism and then have American Promise there and a couple others, a little bit more, a little less wide is what I'm trying to say. I don't hit the all button with that one, but that it's just interesting when you try to think about how you're going to construct your ticket here. But hey, this is just one race. There's a lot of races going on. Want to talk a little bit about the Black-Eyed Susan. What do you guys think about the race on a Friday with the fillies? Have you guys had a chance to look at that, Sean?
Sorry,
I'll be honest. I haven't looked at it. I haven't looked at it yet,
okay.
Kiev. I got to apologize for that, but we will mention. I'll tweet that out. I'll send you the text. You'll get a text of what I'm playing there on Friday.
I appreciate that, Sean.
Yeah, so I'll just give you real quick. 8 Amrith is the one I'm looking at. I think just looking at it real quick. Didn't have a super deep dive. I think a lot of the horses in this race aren't going to like going the distance that they're putting out there that they're entered for here. I think a lot of them are really going to be working up to it and probably aren't quite prepared. So I'm going to take the one that I think is going to be the most ready to go over the mile on the 8th here. And that's the 8 horse. So
how come,
quick preview.
How come the winner of the Kentucky Oaks isn't ever in this one? Is it just because it's 2 weeks away, right? I guess that's why, right?
There's not the same. I mean, you have the Triple Crown scenario there, but it just doesn't have the same, is the other. Any horse that won the Kentucky Derby is a mare is going to, she's worth what she's worth. And unlike the Stallions, you can't breed 100 or 150 horses in the breeding shed for the mare. She gets one baby a year, and that baby's going to be worth a lot, unless the one mare that I would love to own right now, if you gave me one horse that you tell me you could have any horse you want other than a filly, I would want the mare Puka. We talked about it. She's got 3 horses 3 consecutive years that have raced in the Triple Crown.
Well, there you go.
That's an ATM machine every year. Send that yearling to auction and just watch the numbers fly of what people are going to pay for her offspring. And wait till she throws a filly, because people are going to want that family tree.
Absolutely. I'm just spitballing here. How do you grow the sport? Make them run them all right now. That's a correct answer.
They got to start televising the Triple Tiara is what they got to do and try and make it this big, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Never happened, but it's a thought.
You guys are very passionate horse racing specialists, and I enjoy it for this part of the year. Obviously, Breeders' Cup is a little different. There's football and everything going on for different things. I try to delve in it a little bit, but I'm definitely not up to your level. But someday, hopefully, we all can be up to your level, so we can get your great information. And speaking of your great information, Sean, where could our listeners and viewers get your great information for the Preakness Stakes this weekend?
I'm over at theoddsbreakers.com, not as much as I'd like to be, but that's where you can find me. Also on Twitter at the Great Kanaki.
All right, Marco, what about you? You hit in the Derby a bit. Maybe we can hit again in the Preakness. Where could our listeners get your great information?
Yeah, just head over to wagertalk.com, go to my homepage, follow me on Twitter at Marco in Vegas. And, like you said, we nailed the Derby. And if you stretched it out and played superfectas as well, if you remember, one of the 2 long shots that I texted to you when I went off the air with the internet was the 3-horse Gambit, whatever. I forget the name of the horse there, but
Final
he
Gambit.
come flying
He hit
for 4.
Hit the 4. Yeah.
So it was a good Saturday, first Saturday of May.
Yeah, 10-cent super paid over $100. I mean, that dollar super over 1,000. That is a great Saturday in May. Check out Sean Kanaki and Marco D'Angelo if you would like a great Saturday in May as well. Boys, we'll be talking, if not sooner, by August. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Kiev.